Welcome everyone to another Ending Explained. This time I will be exploring Resident Evil Village, the 8th major installment in the popular Resident Evil franchise, and explain how the ending ties into the unanswered questions like Ethan's inhuman healing abilities and how this game is linked to Umbrella. We'll explain the full story and then get into how everything is connected, so expect spoilers, but again I expect people to tell me in the comments that I spoiled things for them. But before we begin, remember to like and subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff, it does help me out a lot. We start off the game hearing a folklore tale about a girl venturing into a dark forest after being separated from her mother. She meets with a vampire bat, a fish, and a horse when trying to find her way back to her mother. Each one gives the little girl a gift, with the exception of the horse, where the girl takes something from the creature, angering it, and all the surrounding creatures become hostile. This is foreshadowing the future events of the game. We then cut to Mia and Ethan, who are sitting with their daughter Rose 3 years after the events of Resident Evil 7. Ethan comments that Mia is acting strange and snaps at him, asking him to take Rose to bed. When heading upstairs, we learn that Ethan has been learning more about combat and survival from books published by Joseph Kendo, who is the brother of Robert Kendo. Resident Evil fans will know him as the person who created weapons for stars in Resident Evil 2 and 3. We also learn from the Baker files, which was a pre-order exclusive for some reason, that a reporter has been trying to get into contact with Ethan and Mia since the incident was covered up by a gas leak and the reporter didn't buy it. Mia and Ethan were put into hiding by Chris since the crime syndicate Mia was working for, the Connections, will likely search for them since they were infected by the mold, cured, and Mia being a former agent for the Connections. After putting Rose to bed, Mia and Ethan sit down to dinner and she fixes a local dish to Ethan's surprise. Right then the power cuts off and Mia is shot, but it seems unfazed by the bullet. A barrage of bullets then hit Mia and Chris walks in, shooting Mia multiple times in the head. Chris then orders his squad called Hound Wolves to take Rose and Ethan along with Mia's corpse. Now, according to the Baker family incident report, we learned that Chris has essentially gone rogue. He has taken control of an elite squad who are wishing to follow him, and he has also taken hold of classified documents. It's not clear why he has done this until the end of the game, but all the events that led up to the beginning of Resident Evil 8 have been Chris's own doing and not authorized to be by the BSAA. When waking up, Ethan finds the transport crew have been killed and Rose is missing. He then heads to the local village for help, and upon meeting a scared man is greeted by a lichen. The creature bites off 2 of Ethan's fingers and most parts of his hand. Ethan fights off the lichens and hears a message about survivors meeting at a specific location. The lichens, having Ethan pinned, take off after hearing a call off screen. Ethan immediately returns to his feet and heads into the village, meeting an old woman who gives him a cryptic message about Rose being in the village. Ethan heads to the house where survivors are gathering and learns of someone named Mother Miranda who has protected the village until now. There's an entire faith surrounding this woman and the villagers see her as some sort of deity. When praying, one of the villagers turns into a lichen and kills all the other survivors, with his daughter saving Ethan but dying afterwards when trying to escape the burning house. I mean, you can't help this woman, she wanted to die with her dad, not to mention Ethan does get a little overdramatic. You just met this woman, but I guess just losing too many people at once is getting a little too hard for Ethan to deal with. When leaving, Ethan sees a glimpse of Mother Miranda killing one of the villagers and sees the old woman again before entering the castle grounds. Before he enters, a man walks in and traps Ethan inside a metal cage, taking him to Mother Miranda and her lords. We finally meet Mother Miranda and her jolly family. Each one is arguing who gets to sentence Ethan, with Heisenberg, the man who can control metal, being appointed by Mother Miranda. Heisenberg frees Ethan from his shackles and gives him a sporting 10-second head start before sicking the lichen horde on him. Ethan is successful in this escape, frees himself from his shackles, and thanks to the victims before him, is able to bypass the future trap since their corpses destroyed the machines. I mean, that's just plain lucky. When outside, Ethan meets the Duke, a large man who is willing to help Ethan in exchange for a prize. The Duke serves as a living safe room and serves an active purpose in this adventure. When inside Lady Demetress's castle, the tall vampire lady that everyone's obsessed with, Ethan is captured by her daughters Daniela, Cassandra, and Bella. Demetress takes a taste of Ethan's blood and notes that it tastes stale. This is an important detail left by Capcom, and the vampires string Ethan up about to get processed. Ethan savagely frees himself and begins exploring a way out of the castle. When headed upstairs, Bella finds Ethan and gives chase, forcing Ethan to escape into the cellar. He barely evades Demetress's gaze and finds out that servants inside the castle sent to the cellar never come back. We find notes of Demetress turning locals into more servants and finds the rejects, female servants turned into mindless slaves housed in the dungeons. This is where the maiden took place. That was the first demo released to promote Resident Evil Village that took place before the events of the core game, when one of the servants tried to escape and was killed by Demetress. We learned that she opened a window, sending a chilling air into a room during dinner, which led to her death. This is a hint of how to kill the vampires. Ethan escapes the dungeons but is cornered by Bella, revealing by accident that she cannot take cold temperatures, which is why they yelled at the maiden who opened the window, allowing Ethan to put her down. Ethan explores more of the castle and finds out that Demetress is aware that Ethan has escaped and killed one of her daughters. Enraged, she goes against Mother Miranda's wishes to focus on the upcoming ceremony and goes on the hunt for Ethan. Grabbing her personal key, Ethan is cornered by Demetress when trying to leave, and she takes an active role hunting Ethan throughout the castle, even cutting off one of his hands and constantly patrolling the castle. Ethan escapes and is able to repair his arm like nothing happened, which is another important detail. Ethan also discovers the way out by collecting masks throughout the castle. He finds another one, but Cassandra and Demetress chases Ethan. Cornering him, Cassandra attempts to kill Ethan, but he blows off a part of the wall, exposing her to cold air and kills her. It's during this section players can locate documents about the daughters. They died and underwent treatment with Demetress using a parasite called Kadu. These girls were reborn as the daughters of Demetress and cannot take low temperatures, as the bugs die instantly that compose their body when touching cold air. We also learned that there is a special dagger called the Dagger of Death Flowers that is coated in all forms of poison. So we have to locate this incredible dagger in order to kill an immortal vampire who just left this information for people to locate. I mean, okay. Ethan heads outside to find more mutated servants, but these can fly, and you deal with them accordingly by shooting them in the face. Grabbing one of the final masks, Ethan heads his way outside of the castle to the church. Inside houses the special dagger that we were talking about, and a coffin that's strangely not locked. I mean, this seems extremely just stupid, but I mean, Demetress is also extremely hubris, so likely she just didn't care or didn't think anyone would ever discover this dagger. Ethan is discovered by Demetress, who grabs him and is ready to kill him, but Ethan uses the dagger to flood her with poison. This forces Demetress to change into her mutated form, a bloodborne-like creature. Ethan is able to topple the beast and grabs what looks like a yellowish flask. Heading down the path, the old woman from earlier is back and speaks in cryptic riddles, at least to Ethan, and finds a mural conveying multiple lords. When back at the village, the Duke is present, and Ethan shows him the flask, wondering if he could tell him anything about this, and the Duke does, informing the flask contains his daughter's head. Despite believing she is dead, the Duke informs him that Rose is alive and is incredibly special, and he simply needs to locate all the parts in order to revive her. With nothing left, he decides to take the Duke's offer and his word, and the Duke directs him to another house that will aid him. Ethan heads to the house and finds out the owner has become a Lycan and kills his partner. He finds a drawing of a winged key that will unlock gates, but has no idea what he needs from this. Ethan returns to the Duke and he tells him of the 4 lords that rule the region. Demetress was one of the 4 lords, and the other 3 include Donna Benevito, the Dollmaker, Mondu, and Heisenberg. The key that Ethan located will unlock the gates to their territory, but are separated into parts, and he must collect them by killing each lord. So Ethan decides to collect the keys, while at the same time each lord will have a part of Rose that Ethan will need to revive her. Ethan heads to the Valley of Mist where Donna is located and starts hallucinating visions of Mia. Heading deeper, Ethan gives up his family photo in order to enter Donna's home. The house looks ordinary, which is terrifying in its own right, but it houses incredible amounts of dolls. Ethan is able to locate an elevator and heads into the basement to find that the area again looks strangely normal, but things start to go haywire when he finds Donna's doll Angie and the lights go out. The doll suddenly is gone, Ethan loses all his weapons, and the doll of Mia is now on the table. Interestingly, according to the concept art, Donna was originally going to be a doctor, which is why everything looks like it belongs in a hospital. Searching the doll, Ethan locates clues and finds his way out, all while having visions of Mia and items from his home inside the basement, such as a music box given to him during their wedding and film reels that dictate his life with Mia and Rose. The hallucinations get worse after exploring a well that looks like it came out of the ring, and the power goes out again. In one of the most terrifying moments in the game, a giant fetus baby appears, chasing Ethan throughout, yelling Dada. It's just incredibly unnerving. It's definitely convinced me never to have kids. Ethan is able to avoid the child and escapes the basement to find the doll Donna was holding. She attacks and Ethan gives chase with a game of hide and seek. Ethan must track down the doll and stab it 3 times. Successful in his pursuit, Ethan kills Donna and grabs both the key and a part of Rose. When leaving, you can find documents of what exactly happened, and according to a local gardener, apparently Donna developed a type of hallucinogenic plant which caused the visions that Ethan was seeing, and she apparently killed her victims and turned them into fertilizer, at least that's what's indicated here. Heading back, Ethan uses the new key to enter a part of the village and is attacked by a more powerful lichen. We also learn of the husband of Lucinia, the wife of who let Ethan into their home along with other survivors at the beginning of the game, who was killed by Elena's father. So apparently the man died fighting this creature, and he had a grenade launcher stored close by but was unable to grab it. Ethan can kill the creature or evade it, eventually heading to Monroe's territory. Ethan is able to grab Rose's flask easily, but stupidly starts to talk to the fish man, who begs Ethan not to take it. Using his pathetic nature, he bides his time as he closes off Ethan's escape route. Ethan then locates a boat and a boat key to head deeper into Monroe's territory. We are then reunited with Chris and his team. There's little interaction here as Monroe attacks in his mutated form, and Ethan survives. We then see Monroe struggling to maintain his current form as he babbles on as it should be him instead of Ethan with Miranda before succumbing fully to his transformation. Ethan is surrounded by water and must drain the area to continue forward. Ethan tries to get the power on as he flees Monroe, who is on pursuit, and voices his pathetic desire to be loved by Miranda. I mean, just listen to this crap. With the power restored and the water drained, Ethan engages Monroe in battle, believing if he kills Ethan, Miranda will love him. But of course he doesn't, and he dies horribly. I seriously hated this fight because it's incredibly annoying with his acid spewing abilities. So seeing him die in a painfully brutal way is actually cathartic for me. Yeah, you deserve to die, you asshole. And Monroe's group gone, Ethan enters his home and finds Monroe's key and his personal diary, which highlights his desire to be loved. Everyone mocked him and made fun of him because of his grotesque look. Heisenberg then contacts Ethan through the TV and proposes an alliance, wishing to give him his flask, but there's a catch. Ethan must fight his way through the Lichen Den and against their leader, which was the former head of the village. Ethan then grabs the flask but gets a vision from Rose's perspective when she was taken by Miranda, which will make sense later. Heisenberg contacts Ethan again and proposes an alliance, but Ethan must come to his factory first. You can also find where Demetrius was transformed, with an optional area indicating where several people were kidnapped and turned into these monsters, but Demetrius was the only one who survived and was taken to Mother Miranda, later becoming Lady Demetrius. When finally meeting Heisenberg, he reveals that Miranda has been orchestrating everything. Essentially, she wanted Ethan to kill the Lords to see if he's strong enough to be her new right-hand man, and any possible threat, seeing the Lords as possible threats due her leadership. Whereas the other Lords loved Miranda, Heisenberg didn't feel the same way and wants to be free from her. He proposes to Ethan, stupidly, that he will allow him to live if he is allowed to use Rose's power in order to defeat Miranda, because that makes total sense, Heisenberg. Ethan refuses, as he would, and then he is pushed down a hole where Ethan stupidly decides to sit next to because Heisenberg said sit down. I mean, seriously, don't these people think these things through? Either way, Ethan is attacked by Propeller Man. I'm not kidding. According to Capcom's concept art, that was his nickname. It's not his real name, but I'm going to call him Propeller Man because that sounds infinitely more better. When trying to escape the factory, Ethan learns that Heisenberg has been creating an army using a combination of the Kadu parasite and his metal abilities fused onto human skin to create a metal army. Ethan storms his way through the factory as Heisenberg whines about family drama and why he's always being hunted by Propeller Man because this guy doesn't give up hope. After forging a new key using Heisenberg's tools, we are attacked once again by Propeller Man, but this time we know his weakness thanks to Heisenberg leaving a journal exposing that he has an exposed reactor on his back. I mean, do people just leave the weak points to their creations lying around? That seems like very counterproductive. We also learned from Heisenberg's journals that he was forced into the experiment and he was the most successful out of all the Lords, but hates it because he's just a slave to Mother Miranda, saying that he was robbed of his dignity. He also makes note of Ethan's body in a strange entry that will prove important later. Ethan makes it out of the factory and still refuses Heisenberg's offer. With the ceremony happening soon, he decides to start his plan, mutating himself and tossing Ethan down the factory, where we find Chris, who decides to tell Ethan everything. Miranda is a BOW and can shapeshift. Using this ability, she disguised herself as Mia to kidnap Rose. Chris caught wind of this and decided to take action immediately along with his men. This is why Mia, or exactly Miranda, was annoyed when Ethan brought up the past. She made a local dish and did not flinch when she was shot by Chris for the first time. Chris didn't tell him because he didn't want Ethan to get involved, but come on Chris, that was stupid, you should have told him. But he does elaborate on it later that the reason he didn't tell Ethan is because he was afraid he was infected with Mother Miranda's Kadu parasite, which makes sense. After being shot, Miranda mimicked a corpse, which allowed her to surprise attack Chris's transport and kidnap Rose. Okay, I'm just putting this out here. Chris is a veteran soldier when it comes to BOWs. Why would you keep the corpse of someone like that in the same vehicle, considering how these things are notorious for coming back to life? I'm just saying, you have someone who can shapeshift. You should automatically assume this person is going to come back to life. Just saying. Regardless, Chris has been building a tank made of plastic and metal to take down Heisenberg, who can only control pure metal. Ethan will fight him while Chris plants explosives to destroy the factory and Heisenberg's metal army. Using the tank, Ethan is able to go toe-to-toe with Heisenberg, but is knocked off the tank. Right when Heisenberg is about to kill Ethan, Chris explodes the factory, allowing Ethan to escape and use the surrounding debris as cover as he takes on Heisenberg on foot one-on-one. In one final attack, Ethan is able to destroy a reactor on Heisenberg's back and kill him permanently, as he continuously voices how he's the good guy and the freedom fighter in this situation, then reveals that he's going to use Rose as basically a casualty to become even more powerful. He's no different from Mother Miranda. After the fight, Chris calls and tells Ethan to stay put, but Miranda appears, taking on the forms of Mia and the old woman before revealing her true form, mocking Ethan and dropping hints about him being something different before ripping his heart out, literally. With Ethan supposedly dead, Chris laments on his failure and how his team couldn't retrieve his body. Reviewing his records, Chris didn't tell Ethan about the plan again because he thought Mother Miranda already infected him. With nothing left, Chris leads his men against Miranda to destroy the Megamycene core. When leading the attack, we learn that the BSAA is leading their own attack for unknown reasons, and Chris orders one of his men to see why they are here. Chris fights his way to the central core and faces against the older brother of the village leader, who leads the Lycans and guards the core. With him dead, Chris finds the megamycene and plants explosives on it, but decides to hunt down Miranda to make sure that she's dead. This is where the mold centralized and where it originated. Heading deeper, Chris finds Miranda's laboratory. Inside, we find out that each of the lords were experimenting to see if they were suitable for someone named Ava, with Demetrius requiring large amounts of blood and human flesh to maintain her regeneration, Donna able to control plants infected with mold and separate her Kadu to control the dolls that we saw, Moreau turning into a fish-human hybrid, and Heisenberg being the most successful of all the lords. Each one of them, despite their strengths and ability to adapt to the Kadu better than the Lycans, proved to be not a match for Ava. So who's Ava? Well, Ava is Miranda's daughter who died 100 years ago to Spanish flu, and Miranda went to a cave to die alongside her daughter where she discovered the megamycene. This granted her regeneration and shapeshifting abilities, including consuming her daughter inside the mold. The megamycene is a giant hard drive that stores the consciousness of everyone who perishes. This gives Miranda hope to bring back her daughter, experimenting on the villagers to create a vessel for Ava. This led to the creation of the Kadu parasite, with those infected dying, turning into Lycans, or becoming like the Lords. Miranda would also mentor Oswald Spencer, who we all know as one of the co-founders of the notorious Umbrella, but he believed that her vision to bring back Ava was short-sighted and the mold would not be as infectious enough to achieve his goals. Believing a virus was the key, but leaving on good terms. Spencer would continue speaking to Miranda, including informing her of his discovery of the progenitor virus in Africa, which would lead to the events of Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. So that's the reason behind Umbrella's logo in the village. It isn't because Umbrella influenced the town, it was because Spencer used the local symbol as a type of tribute for everything that Miranda did for him. We also learned that the events of Resident Evil 7 were caused by Miranda, who led samples of the mold to the connections, believing they could aid her in reviving Ava. Evelyn was created but was deemed a defect, but thanks to the connections learned about Rose. Chris discovered Mia is alive and was used for experiments. She is still shaken and she asks about Rose and Ethan, to which Chris tells her about Ethan's death. But Mia knows he's not dead, and she's been keeping secrets about why this is possible from him. We then dart back to Ethan's perspective, who's seemingly alive and speaking to Evelyn, who is stored in the megamycene. It is revealed that Ethan died in Resident Evil 7 after Jack attacked him. He was infected with the mold, which granted him healing abilities, but unlike the other Bakers, Ethan was special. He wasn't controllable because he was too far gone, but he wouldn't mutate the way the Bakers did after massive physical trauma. Instead, the mold just kept Ethan on life support, constantly regenerating him, similar to how the nanosuit from Crysis 2 kept Alcatraz alive. And Mia knew this is why she wanted to keep Ethan from getting tested when Rose was born. Despite being cured, the mold was still alive in him, and he was basically just a giant mold figure who is kept again on life support. If it wasn't for Rose, it was because she was trying to keep him from knowing the truth. And this is why Demetrius also said that Ethan's blood tasted stale. He wasn't actually alive in the sense of the word. This is also why Ethan was getting visions from Rose's perspective, because she was also part mold, which allowed her connection to the megamycene. Ethan, being part mold as well, was able to access that hard drive of information during specific times, and with Rose being part human and part mold is the reason why she can be crystallized into several components and still be alive. She is basically what the connections since Resident Evil 6 have been trying to accomplish, the ultimate weapon, someone who can regenerate from near any type of physical trauma. Ethan wakes up to find the Duke has taken his body, and that's why Chris's men couldn't recover it. And despite this revelation, Ethan is just as determined to save his daughter as before. The Duke informs Ethan that his time is limited, but also knows that he wants nothing more than to save his daughter, so he's been taking Ethan to the ceremony to face Miranda. Ethan's regeneration has reached its limit since losing his heart, but champions on to fight Miranda, who is successful in reviving Rose, not Ava. This entire process requires a tremendous amount of power, and Miranda's regeneration has also reached its limits, giving Ethan a fighting chance. Before, we saw that Miranda was able to take multiple bullets to the head without even flinching, but now she is vulnerable. In an epic boss fight, Ethan gives everything to kill Miranda and succeeds, but his body starts to crumble. Ethan has reached his point, and Chris is here to help. Trying to carry Ethan out, he motivates him by stating that Mia is alive and to hang on, but it proves too much. Ethan asks Chris to look after Rose and gives her his jacket, and he takes the detonator from Chris to destroy Miranda, who has fused with the megamycene.
Trigger, we can't be anywhere near it. Ah, damn it. Mia's waiting for you. She's alive, you hear me? Alive.
Mia, I'm so sorry. I love you. Keep Rose safe.
Hey. And you tell yourself. Now come on, it's not that much further.
Watch over her. Teach her to be strong.
God damn it.
Goodbye, Rosemary.
Ethan.
Mia is safe on the helicopter with Rose, but wonders where Ethan is as Chris dodges the question until the explosion happens, revealing that Ethan died and stayed back to detonate the bomb. After the explosion, K9, who was sent by Chris to see why the BSAA was in the area, reveals that one of the fallen soldiers was a BOW, leaving Chris to wonder what the hell is going on. While the credits roll, we reveal two new pieces of information. Like in Resident Evil 4, we get a look at what happened to the village before the lichen infection, with the villagers becoming sick and Miranda providing a cure, but it turns out to be the Kadu, which turned everyone into lichens, including with the lichens killing all the children, unlike Resident Evil 4 where the parasite killed any of the children infected by it because their bodies couldn't handle it. In the after credits, it's indicated that the lichens actually killed all the children in the final, well, illustration. I mean, what does this mean? It kind of indicates that. In the after credits, we find out that Rosemary has grown up, but is not living a normal life. When visiting Ethan's grave, she takes time to mention a test, but these aren't ordinary tests, as a man in black comes to pick her up and jokingly calls her Evelyn, which causes her to become hostile, threatening the man about powers Chris doesn't know about, confirming that she's being trained similar to Sherry Birkin as an agent, but unlike Sherry, these people are taking precautions as a sniper makes note that he has a bead on her head. This heavily hints that during the revival process, that those inside the megamycene have become part of Rose when she was revived. This not only includes Evelyn, but it also includes Ethan as well, with the ending saying that the father's story is now done. So it's highly likely that the next game will star Rosemary as the new protagonist. In the final scene of the game, we get this cryptic look at a lone figure walking on the side of the road. Now, a lot of people have theories about this, but my theory is that that's Ethan. I know this is a long shot, but Ethan is not alive. I believe this is Capcom's way of showing that Ethan is still looking after his daughter even from a distance despite being dead. He's still there and a part of her, with her holding on to his jacket as protection and him being a part of her even though he's passed on. Remember, Ethan has always been this figure that has never had a defined face. In a way, he was always supposed to be an extension of the player. Even though he does have a defined face based on the figurines and everything that's released, he's always been an extension of the player, similar to how Link has defined features and personalities, but it's an extension of the player. You can rename him, and he's supposed to showcase ourselves in that world. And with Ethan, it does reflect this type of focus Capcom went with Ethan Winters, because we barely see him in the distance, but he kind of does have Ethan's proportions. At least that's my opinion on the matter, that Ethan is still watching over his daughter even from the next life, if this universe has that. But, I mean, lots of people have different theories. One theory is that it's Chris and he's just keeping an eye on Rosemary like he promised Ethan. And another person says it's connections and they're watching from a distance to keep an eye on Rosemary for the day they kidnap her or, you know, experiment on her. But that's my theory. I strongly believe this is just a tribute to Ethan still watching over his daughter. And that brings us to this end and explain. I really loved Resident Evil Village. Yes, it plays more like Resident Evil 4, but in a way it does match the lore in terms of Ethan being much more mobile and much more seasoned in combat, as opposed to Resident Evil 7, which was more like the traditional Resident Evil games, but also complemented the fact that Ethan was just an everyman who's never really held a gun or been in a situation like that, so that's why he was all jittery and not as nimble as he is now. But I really like this game. I've replayed it several times, and I really hope that you enjoy it as well. Give it a shot. Not sure about the multiplayer. I don't really have interest in that, but I really like the single player, so it gets my full recommendation if you love Resident Evil games. If you like this video, subscribe, like, all that YouTube stuff. Follow me on Twitch. The links are below, and I'll see you all next time. Please check out my other Resident Evil content, and I will see you on the next video.